when you think about, 17th century Scotland, fairies aren't really the first thing that come to mind.
Right.
But that's exactly where we're headed in this deep dive.
Yeah.
Straight into this world of the secret commonwealth of elves, fauns, and fairies.
Into the wee folk.
And get this, our guide is a reverend.
Yeah, that's right. Like, what?
It's true. Robert Kirk, he was a minister in the Scottish Highlands.
Wow.
And he wrote this whole treatise on these beings. And his perspective is so unique because he was living right there in the heart of all this fairy folklore.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to, like, study folklore from afar, right? But Kirk, he was living amongst people who actually believed in these beings.
Absolutely.
It wasn't just an academic thing for him, it was personal.
You could just sense that in his writing. Like, it's not just some, like, dry collection of tales.
Right.
You can tell he's really trying to understand these beings, categorize them, analyze their abilities.
Right.
He's almost treating them like their own distinct society. Like a secret commonwealth.
Hidden within our own.
It's like he's almost like a proto-anthropologist.
Yeah.
Meticulously, documenting the habits and the beliefs of this other culture.
Exactly.
That exists alongside his own. And speaking of documentation, let's actually get into the details.
Sure.
I mean, Kirk, he doesn't just mention fairies in passing. He goes deep.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what kind of things did he believe they were capable of?
Well, I mean, some of their attributed powers were surprisingly, like, mundane.
Okay.
For example, they were believed to steal milk from cows.
Oh, wow.
Using magic.
Okay, now that's getting a little too close to home.
Right.
Like, imagine you're a farmer back then and you're trying to figure out why your cows are suddenly dry.
Yeah.
Do you blame a neighbor?
Right.
Or do you, like, suspect supernatural forces at work?
It really shows you how intertwined this belief in the supernatural was with their actual daily life back then. And these beliefs, I mean, they weren't just these abstract ideas. They had very real-world consequences.
Yeah, and that actually reminds me, I don't want to steal your thunder.
No, go ahead.
But you mentioned elf shot.
Oh, yeah. Elf shot.
Okay, now that sounds a little bit
That's a good one.
more dangerous than some stolen milk.
Yeah, elf shot was a very real fear. Kirk describes elf shot as these, invisible darts that fairies could use to cause sudden illness.
Oh, my God.
Or even death.
Wow.
In, like, animals and people.
Oh, my. So, like, a farmer could lose their livestock.
Exactly.
Or, like, people are getting sick.
And they would attribute that to these invisible weapons.
Wow.
Yeah, it's wild.
So we're not just talking about, like, mischievous sprites playing pranks.
Yeah.
These beings were seen as a genuine force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely. And so to try to understand them, Kirk attempts to reconcile these, like, folk beliefs with his own Christian worldview, which was quite the balancing act.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, how does a devout minister square the existence of fairies with his faith?
Exactly.
That seems like a very tricky theological dilemma.
Yeah, it's like, on the one hand, you've got, established Christian doctrine, and then on the other, you have these really deeply held folk beliefs about these supernatural beings with very real powers.
Right.
So Kirk actually tries to bridge this gap by suggesting that fairies aren't demons, but rather like a separate order of beings that exist alongside humanity.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Like, he's not just dismissing them, right? He's saying, no, they exist, but they're just different.
Right, and it's their own thing.
Right.
And this is a really fascinating insight into, like, the intellectual landscape of the 17th century. It's like he's trying to find a place for these beings within, like, existing framework of his belief system.
Of his belief.
Without just dismissing them as superstition or whatever.
Right, and it's this struggle to reconcile these seemingly contradictory ideas that make Kirk's work so compelling.
Yes.
Because he's not afraid to grapple with the unknown.
Exactly.
Even if it means challenging conventional wisdom.
And this is nowhere more evident than in his discussion of second sight.
Okay, here we go.
Which takes us even deeper into this world of the Secret Commonwealth.
All right, so before we get into that,
Yeah.
I think we need a little bit of clarity here.
Okay.
For those of us who aren't, well-versed in 17th century Scottish folklore.
Right.
What exactly is second sight?
So second sight, as Kirk describes it,
Yeah.
is this ability to perceive things beyond our ordinary senses.
Okay.
It's about glimpsing this hidden world.
Okay.
Whether that's seeing fairies, predicting the future, or even communicating with the dead.
Hold on.
Yeah.
That sounds like something straight out of like a fantasy novel.
It does.
And Kirk actually believed that people could do this.
He did?
Like a man of the cloth.
I know. Believe it or not, he did. And he wasn't alone, actually.
Really?
Belief in second sight was surprisingly common in the Scottish Highlands at the time.
Wow. Okay.
In fact, Kirk actually includes a letter in his book from somebody named Lord Tarbot.
Oh, Lord Tarbot.
Who was an outsider who was clearly fascinated by this whole concept of second sight.
Wow.
But we'll get into Lord Tarbot and his experiences with second sight in a bit.
Okay, so we've got Lord Tarbot.
Yes.
Who we'll come back to.
Yes.
But first, let's get back to Kirk and his own experiences.
Right.
Because he wasn't just, like, writing about this stuff.
No.
He claimed to have witnessed it firsthand.
He did. And what's really fascinating is that
wow.
Kirk attempts to approach this, seemingly supernatural ability with this surprisingly systematic lens.
Okay.
He describes specific rituals for inducing second sight.
Oh, wow.
He details its benefits, its drawbacks.
Wow.
And he even reflects on his own personal encounters with, like, the unseen world.
So this is where it gets really interesting.
Yes.
Because Kirk isn't just recounting folk tales, right?
Yeah.
He's trying to understand the mechanics of this ability.
Yes, the psychology behind it.
The psychology, wow.
The implications for the people who have it.
So it's not just about, like, fairies dancing in the moonlight.
Exactly.
It's about the very real impact that these beliefs and these experiences had on people's actual lives.
Totally, yeah.
Like their fears, their hopes. Their attempts to just make sense of the world around them.
And it's this exploration of the intersection between belief and experience and the limits of human perception. I mean, it's what makes the Secret Commonwealth such a fascinating and enduring work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got Kirk, a minister, claiming to have experienced second sight himself.
Yeah.
But then we have this Lord Tarbot character.
Right.
An outsider, like, stepping into this world of fairies and folklore, and it's like he's our window into how these beliefs were perceived.
Totally.
By somebody outside of the Scottish Highlands.
Yeah. I mean, you got to remember, you're talking about a time when news traveled slow.
Oh, yeah.
And these whispers of magic held a certain allure,
Right.
And Lord Tarbot, he was clearly captivated by this whole concept of second sight. And he recounts these stories of seers predicting things that they couldn't have possibly known.
Right.
Through, like, normal means.
Like what?
One that really stands out to me is this tale of a seer who describes this entire English army marching down this hillside days before anybody else knew they were even in the area.
Hold on.
Yeah.
An entire army.
I know.
Appearing out of thin air.
It's a while.
You'd think that somebody would have invested in a better early warning system.
Right.
Than a guy who could see the future.
It really makes you wonder, right? But that's the thing about these stories, is that they really highlight how this belief in second sight really permeated the culture. Right. It wasn't just like entertainment or curiosity. It was woven into their understanding of the world.
Okay, so what other, like, mind-blowing predictions did this Lord Tarbot, like, document? Did he have, like, a greatest hits collection of second sight stories?
Yeah, he recounts this other one. It's kind of chilling, actually.
Okay.
About a seer who predicts a man's death based on seeing this, like, spectral shroud.
Oh, my God.
That was kind of enveloping him.
Wow.
And it's these stories, right,
yeah.
coming from someone outside of that, like, local culture that I think really make you stop and think, because they add this whole other dimension to Kirk's account.
It's like having, corroborating evidence in, like, a historical mystery.
Totally, yeah.
These anecdotes, even if, you approach them with a healthy dose of skepticism, I think they point to something compelling.
Yeah.
About, like, the power of belief.
Totally.
And the human fascination with the unknown.
And it raises this interesting point. Like, today, we might draw parallels.
Okay.
Between these accounts of second sight and, like, our modern interest in things like premonitions or psychic abilities.
Right.
It makes you wonder if, in our modern quest for this, like, scientific understanding of the world,
right,
if we've lost touch with that sense of wonder.
Yeah,
that acceptance of the possibility of things beyond, like, our immediate comprehension.
It's like we've traded fairies and elf shot for UFO sightings and conspiracy theories.
Right.
Like, The players have changed.
Yeah.
But
the game's the same.
That fascination with the unexplained remains.
Exactly. And it's this like enduring curiosity that I think makes Kirk's work so relevant.
Right.
Even centuries later.
But let's get back to that. Like tricky theological tightrope.
Okay.
He was walking. Because how does a man of God, steeped in Christian doctrine, how does he reconcile the existence of fairies and second sight?
It's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah, it's you can't just casually mention fairies and supernatural powers in his sermon.
Right, and just call it a day.
Yeah. So how does he square that circle?
So Kirk actually acknowledges this tension head-on in the text.
Yeah.
He's clearly wrestling with this, how to fit these folk beliefs into a Christian worldview.
Okay.
And his solution, while maybe a bit unconventional, really reveals a lot about the intellectual climate of the time.
Okay, so how does he reconcile the seemingly irreconcilable?
Well, so instead of dismissing fairies as like demonic entities, which would have been like the easy way out.
Right, yeah.
Kirk proposes that they represent this like distinct order of creation.
Okay.
He doesn't really see them as inherently good or evil.
Okay.
But rather as beings that exist alongside humanity.
Sure.
Bound by their own rules and customs.
That's a surprisingly nuanced view.
It is.
For the time.
Yeah.
He's not just trying to like shoehorn them into these existing categories of good and evil.
Yeah, it's more like he's
acknowledging like a whole other dimension to creation itself.
It reflects this like broader debate that was happening in intellectual circles at the time, like questions about the nature of the soul, the possibility of other like intelligent beings.
Right.
You know, the very definition of what it means to be human.
Right. So he's not just grappling with fairies.
Exactly.
He's grappling with like some of the biggest philosophical questions of his era.
Yeah, he's like the
OG, he's like the original X-Files agent, but instead of aliens.
Instead of aliens, it's fairies.
He's investigating like the hidden world of fairies and folklore.
And just like Mulder and Scully,
he
approaches this whole thing with this like mix of open-mindedness, but also like a desire to ground the fantastical in something tangible.
Right. He doesn't shy away from the strangeness.
No.
But he also tries to apply like a degree of logic and reason to his observation.
Yes.
Which I think makes it all the more compelling.
Totally.
Because he's not just like a storyteller at that point. He's a seeker.
Yeah.
He's somebody trying to like make sense of this world around him, even the parts that like seem to defy explanation.
And he doesn't stop there.
Okay.
He doesn't just like document these beliefs. He seems to anticipate a future where understanding the secret commonwealth might become as commonplace as other once unthinkable discoveries.
Like he's saying like, hey, this may sound crazy now, but just you wait. What do you think he meant by that?
Right.
Was he being literal, or is there like a deeper message?
Yeah, I mean, that's within his words.
That's a question for another day, but it's a very thought-provoking way to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
I mean, we've explored the powers of fairies, the mysteries of second sight, that theological tightrope walk that Kirk's navigating.
Yeah.
But there's one last aspect of the Secret Commonwealth that we need to unravel.
Okay. So we've covered so much ground here.
We have.
Fairies stealing milk, invisible darts causing illness.
Right.
Seers predicting the arrival of armies. Like,
it's a lot to process.
It's a lot, even for a seasoned deep diver, right?
Yeah.
But then Kirk, he hits us with this like almost prophetic line about the Secret Commonwealth one day being as readily understood as any other scientific discovery.
Right.
It's almost like he's suggesting that what seems impossible in one era might be commonplace in another. Yeah. It's a really powerful thought when you really sit with it.
Right.
I mean, it makes you wonder, what would Kirk make of like our modern attempts to understand the unexplained? You know, would he see these parallels between his fairies and second sight and our fascination with like UFOs or psychic phenomena, or even like the search for extraterrestrial life?
I feel like we've just updated the mythology.
Right.
We swapped out the fairies for aliens.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that deep-seated human desire to believe, to believe in something beyond the ordinary, that hasn't changed a bit.
I think you're really onto something there. Yeah. Like, I think whether it's, the 17th century or the 21st, there's a part of us, that seems hardwired for wonder.
Yeah.
Hardwired for a sense of mystery. Yeah. And the Secret Commonwealth, in a way, it speaks to that very human need.
Yeah, and it's like this reminder.
It is.
That the boundaries of what we think we know are constantly shifting. And what we might just dismiss as mere superstition today.
Right.
Could very well be tomorrow's groundbreaking discovery.
You just never know.
Right.
You never know.
And just as Kirk challenged the assumptions of his time.
Totally.
We should never be afraid to question our own.
100%.
Because who knows?
I know.
What wonders might be hidden just beyond the reach of our current understanding.
Waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, just waiting for that right moment, the right mind to reveal themselves.
It's out there.
So as you go about your day, keep your eyes open.
Keep your mind open.
Keep your mind curious, right?
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, you'll catch a glimpse of something that makes you question the boundaries of what you thought was possible.
Exactly.
Because after all, as Robert Kirk reminds us, there's a whole secret commonwealth out there.
A whole other world.
Just waiting to be discovered.
Illuminati got me feeling like apocalypse. I would have been on top of the charts, but it's politics. You do some gimmick shit and post, you get a lot of clicks. Drop some real shit and they probably won't acknowledge it.